Good afternoon. Welcome back to English classes. There was some technical error. Okay, so let's continue the class. Today's English class. Once again, good afternoon and welcome all of you for today's class. So 2 days back, yesterday was leave. So before that, I was teaching you. I was doing with the poem "The Road Not Taken" by Robert Frost. The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. And that poem, I told you, it is a philosophical poem. The poet comes to an intersection in the woods, and the two roads are diverging into the woods, and he does not know which road to take. And we also were discussing that the two roads, one road was very narrow, lot of bushes and undergrowth, and the road was not clear, and another road was smooth without any ditches and without any shrubs growing on it, and the poet was confused which road to take. It is we can associate this poem with the decisions that we make in life. We need to make correct decisions in life, and we need to make correct choices in life, because once we make a choice, once we make a decision, there is no point in regretting about it. There's no point in regretting about it. So that's the poem. And decisions in life, the poet was talking about how to make wise decisions, how to make proper decisions, choices in life. Right? Do you understand, all of you? So with that, we close the poem. So we have done one lesson and we have done one poem. Okay. Next, today I will be moving on to the second prose lesson, and the title of the second prose lesson: The Language of African Literature. Right? And the author is Nugugi. Nugugi Wationgo. Nugugi Wationgo. So this is a piece of African literature. This story, this lesson is taken from African literature, and this writer, the writer of this prose piece is Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Ngugi wa Thiong'o, and Ngugi wa Thiong'o is a Kenyan writer. He is from African literature. He is a Kenyan writer, and here he talks about the colonial powers that have entered into the country, and how the colonial powers have made the people of Kenya forget their language and speak in English. Right? And the writer is very sad. He is very sad that the people of Africa are forgetting their African culture and heritage. He says Africans have become like Americans. Okay, Africans have become like Americans, and Ngugi wa Thiong'o is giving importance for the language of African people. He says every African should know their own mother tongue, right? It's important that they know their mother tongue, because you see many people, many people almost all over the world, they tend to forget their mother tongue, and they tend to speak in a language which they have learnt, like English or some other language. So this author, the author of this lesson, he's he's trying to say in this lesson, tell in this lesson to the African people that importance of a foreign language, and also at the same time not to forget your mother tongue. Okay, so the point here we need to remember is that we need to learn English, no doubt about that. It will help us in our careers, and it will help us in our future. And along with English, we must be very careful that we don't forget our mother tongue, that we don't forget our mother tongue. So this is a very interesting prose piece. I hope all of you will understand and enjoy. And in this lesson, he talks about how the British have changed the education system in Kenya, and how they have implemented the British way of learning, British education system. Same with our country also. In India also, even now, we tend to follow British education system. Yeah, the system and the way of education, the aspects of education are little bit based on British. Not little bit. Most of it is based on the British aspect, our school system. And slowly we are changing our educational system, and we are changing our educational policies also. So here this writer, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, yeah, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, and he is writing this lesson and talking about the power of the local language. And he's saying, he's telling all Africans not to forget their mother tongue. And he's also talking about how the colonials have changed the lifestyle of the Africans. How colonials have changed the lifestyle of the Africans. Africans have become a stereotype of the American or European powers. The way of dressing, the way of talking, the way of doing things. Ngugi wa Thiong'o says that Africans have almost copied, or they have become stereotypes of Europeans. They have become stereotypes of the Europeans. So this lesson is reminding Africans, okay, this lesson is reminding Africans about the need to safeguard their language and the African culture, African heritage, and African way of doing things. And he's talking about his personal life. He's talking about his family, how many children the family, and how he learned different subjects in school, and how was the education system in Kenya. So he's sharing with us all these aspects in this lesson, the language of African literature. Okay, so we shall go into this lesson. Please try to follow carefully, try to understand, try to listen, right, and hope you understand. The Language of African Literature by Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Excuse me. I was born into a large peasant family, father, 4 wives, and about 28 children, right? That's an African culture, their African way of doing things. No, they have 2, 3 wives. Unlike our Indian culture, it's a little bit difficult and different also. So, he was born in a large agriculture family. Okay, he was born in a large agriculture family, and his father had 4 wives and about 28 children. Okay, so in African culture, all of them live in the same area or compound, and the same compound they have two, three huts, around four or five huts, and each family would occupy a hut, and there would be a central hut where the father would stay. So I also belonged as well, all did in those days, to a wider extended family and to the community as a whole. So African communities are large communities, right? They have many children and uncles and aunts and okay, we are talking about four wives. So it's a big family. It's a little bit large extended family. We spoke Gikuyu as we worked in the fields, African dialect. Gikuyu is an African dialect, one dialect of language spoken in Kenya. Spoken in Kenya. There are many languages in Africa, and every country have thousands. More than 100 languages. Like we have in India, we have many languages, the major languages and minor languages, but still, okay, so we speak commonly Hindi or regional language. But in Africa, each tribe or each region have their own language. We spoke in Gikuyu in and outside the home. So they used to speak the Kenyan language Gikuyu in and outside the home. I can vividly recall those evenings of storytelling around the fireside. It was mostly the grown ups telling the children, but everybody was interested and involved. So every evening, okay, there would be a time for storytelling. The whole family would gather around the fireplace after working in the fields. Okay, they would have the dinner and they would sit around the fire and they would tell stories. Elder people would tell stories. We children would retell the stories the following day to other children who worked in the fields picking the pyrethrum flowers, tea leaves, or coffee beans of a European and African landlords. So these Nugugi Wationgo, every evening they would hear some stories, and next day morning, when they met other children in the fields, they would retell the stories to their children. And you see here, Africa at that time was colonized by the Europeans, and many European nations occupied or controlled Africa, and these Europeans they owned large, huge tea estates or coffee plantations. They were the people who controlled agriculture. They were the people who controlled the economy, and these Africans they worked under them as laborers. So this author's family, Nugugi Wationgo, and his family, okay, and other families, they were working for some European person in the fields. Okay, I hope you understand. Okay, so they work in other people's fields. They were employed by the Europeans and African landlords. Right. They were good and bad storytellers. A good one could tell the same story over and over again, and it would always be fresh to us, the listeners. So, he's talking about good and bad storytellers in their family. There were some people who could tell good stories, and the same story they told again and again. It would be fresh for the listeners. African literature, you need to understand at this point, is mostly consisting of oral literature. African literature does not have many books or many writings, but rather their literature is mostly based on oral literature. Like, for example, the parents telling the children some mythology or folk tales, and the children telling their children. So, generation after generation, they get to know about their culture just by listening to what other people have said. Not much of books and other kind of material. Okay, African literature does not have what is it, physical evidence or physical material. So, retelling the story. The differences really were in the use of words and images and the inflection of voices to affect different tones. So when the storytelling was going on, the elders used a range of words, imagery, and also inflection of the voices to make the story very interesting for the children to listen. Yeah, you tell a story, you must know how to do voice modulation. If you want to tell a story, you need to have good voice modulation. You need to use good words, and of course, lot of imagery. So your story is very interesting to the people who are listening to you. Did you understand? Right? Okay. We therefore learn to value words for their meanings and nuances. Language was not a mere string of words. It had a suggestive power well beyond the immediate and lexical meaning. So language is not just speaking a string of words. It has the power, okay, well beyond immediate and lexical meaning. Language has lot of power. You need to go beyond the written meaning. If you want to enjoy a poem, if you want to enjoy a prose piece, you want to enjoy a drama, Shakespeare's drama, or you want to enjoy a short story, you need to have imagination. You need to have creativity, right? When you have the creativity, when you have that imagination, then the story that you're listening will be very interesting to you, and you can understand the gist or the meaning of the story, or the moral of the story. Our appreciation of the suggestive magical powers of language was reinforced by the games we played with words through riddles, proverbs, transposition of symbols, or through nonsensical but musically arranged words. So when Nugugi Vatyango was a small child, he learnt many things through the playway method, right? Through music, okay, and through riddles, proverbs, okay, transposition of syllables, right? He learnt many things from other people, right? And that is how he gained education. Nugugi Vatyango, that is how he gained education. The home and the field were then our primary school. So the fields were was the school for Nugugi Vatyango. In the fields, they would work in the fields, and during afternoon lunch break and during the evening break, they would sit around one elderly person, and the elderly person would tell them stories, sing songs. So like that, Nugugi Vatyango had his primary education, had his primary education. But what is important for this discussion is that the language of our evening teachings and the language of our immediate and wider community and the language of our work in the fields were one. So they used to, the language was restricted for them because they were working in the fields and they would use agricultural vocabulary. And then I went to school, a colonial school, and this harmony was broken. So one day, finally, Nugugi Vatyango's parents decided that he should go to school. Decided that he should go to school. And they put him in a school. What kind of school? A colonial school. What kind of school? A colonial school. A school run by the Britishers or the European powers. A school run by the European powers. And the harmony was broken. Which harmony? The harmony of working in the fields and learning stories and music and other things from elders. It was broken. So no longer Nugugi Vatyango is working in the fields. He is going to school. He has started going to school. Okay? Nugugi Vatyango, the author of the lesson, The Language of African Literature. The language of African literature. And look at the point here. A colonial school. So Nugugi Vatyango attended a colonial school, a school run by the British or the European powers. Right? Once upon a time, even our schools in India were controlled and run by the British and the British people, the white man. Here they were the headmaster, they were the principal, and they controlled and they ruled the education system. Okay. The language of my education was no longer the language of my culture. So the language of education changed for Nugugi Wationgo, the medium of instruction. What is the medium of instruction for most of our schools in India? It's English medium. Then we have the second language and third language. So same way in Kenya also, when the author says the language of my education was no longer the culture of language of my culture. I first went to Kamanadura missionaries run, and then to another Magugu by nationalist groups around the Gikuyu Independent and Karinga Schools Association. So this Nugugi Wationgo studied in local schools run by the Kenyan people, by the nationalist group, and he also studied in the Christian missionary schools, the schools which were run by the missionaries for the local people. Okay. Our language of education was still Gikuyu. So he did not go to English medium school. Yeah, Nugugi Watiango, he did not go to English medium school. He went to a Gikuyu medium, language medium school. I told you Gikuyu is the language spoken by the Kenyans and the one particular group of Kenya, people from Kenya. And Nugugi Watiango belonged to that tribe which spoke in this Gikuyu language. The very first time I was given an ovation for my writing was over a composition in Gikuyu. So this Nugugi Wationgo is a very famous writer, and before he became a famous writer, he was appreciated for a piece of writing over a composition in Gikuyu. That is the early stages of this writer's experience, how he became a well-known writer, how he became a famous writer. So first he wrote a poem, okay, in Gikuyu language, and he was well appreciated. So for my first 4 years, there was still harmony between the language of my formal education and that of the Limuru peasant community. So for a few years in Kenya, each one tolerated the other people's language. Right? I told you tribal conflicts. Tribal conflicts are mostly because of language, or mostly because who is dominant or who is well known in that area. So the author says the first years of his education, there was no problem between Gikuyu and Limuru. Limuru is also another group of people who speak a specific language. It was after the declaration of the state of emergency over Kenya in 1952 that all schools run by patriotic nationalists were taken over by the colonial regime and were placed under district education boards chaired by Englishmen. Right? So all the local schools, Limuru school, Gikuyu school system, all the school systems was taken over by the European powers, and they were placed under district educational boards. English became the language of my formal education. So very soon from the language of his mother tongue, Gikuyu, Nugugi Wationgo joined an English medium school. You see here, the European powers are slowly transforming the people's lifestyle and their way of living and forcing them to adopt English language rather than their own language. So the author here is very sad. English became the language of my formal education. So he went to an English medium school. In Kenya, English became more than a language. It was the language, and all the others had to bow before it in deference. So in Kenya, English was very popular. Not only popular, even those who spoke the language, you had to bow down before them as an aspect of respect, as an aspect of respect, right? So you knew English at that time in Kenya, you were a great man or great woman. So learning English has some advantages and some disadvantages. Thus, one of the most humiliating experiences was to be caught speaking Gikuyu in the vicinity of the school. Now, the writer Nugugi Watyongo says it was a very unique situation. In the school, you are not supposed to speak in mother tongue. You know, some cities in schools in some cities, they have a very strict rule that students should not speak in mother tongue. They should speak only in English. Yeah, students should speak only in English. And once you come to school or you go to college, try to speak in English. So, it was after declaration of state of emergency, okay, that Kenya became a system where English was followed. So here, Gikuyu was forgotten in the school system, and the children could no longer speak Gikuyu, but they had to speak in English. The culprit was given corporal punishment, 3 to 4 strokes of the cane on bare buttocks, or was made to carry a metal plate around the neck with inscriptions such as "I am stupid" or "I am a donkey." So, at that time, when Nugugi Watyongo would go to school, in the school premises, you have to speak only in English. You're not supposed to speak in Gikuyu. And if anyone was speaking in Gikuyu, the culprit was given corporal punishment. The culprit was given corporal punishment. They would give you 5 strokes, 3 to 5 strokes of the cane on your bare buttocks. Or you are supposed to carry a plate around the neck which is written, "I am stupid" or "I am a donkey." So it was a very pathetic situation, right? So in the school, you are not supposed to speak in Gikuyu. You are supposed to speak in English. Sometimes the culprits were fined money they could hardly afford. They were fined money. They were fined money they could hardly afford. Okay, so everyone was supposed to speak in English. And one more thing, along with money, if you speak in Gikuyu, you were fined money, okay, in the school system of Kenya at that time. If you speak in Gikuyu, they would fine you. And then one more thing, a button was given to the pupil who was supposed to hand it over to whoever was caught speaking in mother tongue. There was a button, and whoever spoke in mother tongue, they were supposed to carry the button. So at the end of the day, right, at the end of the day, the children became blaming each other, and at the end of the day, the teacher would find out who had the button, and they would punish that child because that child had spoken in Gikuyu and not in English. The attitude to English was the exact opposite. Any achievement in spoken or written English was highly rewarded. Prizes, prestige, applause, the ticket to higher realms. English became the measure of intelligence and ability in the arts, the sciences, and all the other branches of learning. English became the main determinant of a child's progress up the ladder of formal education. So, English was a craze during the author's time in Kenyan education system. So, learning in English, okay, speaking in English, it was a big craze. And English was a ticket for higher studies, higher lifestyle, right? In all branches, English became the main determinant of a child's progress up the ladder. Okay, so I think we'll stop for today, right? Thank you for listening. Tomorrow we shall continue the same lesson, the language of African literature by Nugu Gi Wationgo, right? Okay, thank you everyone.